When it comes to the future of public libraries, there are two opposing sides in the boxing arena. Those in favor of the library for books and those in favor of the library for user space. Just what side of the arena are you on? The public library system has historically been used for research, reference material, and print documents. But in most recent years, technology progression has created an opportunity for libraries to look beyond print books and explore the digital world. In this argumentative presentation, you are invited to sit back, watch the boxing match take place, and make your own final decision. Just who will the winner be? Library space for books or library space for users? Hi, my name is Deanna White, and I am here today to illustrate how public libraries have become the hub of the community, a destination for social interaction and shared learning.
And my name is Candice Covington, and I will establish how books are still relevant and necessary in today's libraries, and demonstrate the ways in which they can be utilized in more innovative, eye-catching, and effective ways for modern library users.
As the heart of the community, public libraries are a place of interaction, social engagement, and a hub for shared learning. Reflected in a 2016 Pew Research study, patrons see the library as a user space for programming, technology hubs, creation spaces, and workspaces such as reading and meeting rooms. Did you know that library users are engaged within their community and surrounding neighborhoods? In fact, most library users know their neighbors, are active volunteers, and socialize with friends. On the other hand, non-library users tend to use low levels of technology, have fewer ties to their neighbors, and engage less with cultural activities. So who is using the library and what are they using it for? Millennials age 18 through 35 are the most likely generation to use the public library or bookmobile. 53% of millennials use the library, in comparison to 45% Generation Xers, 43% baby boomers, and 36% of the silent generation. 41% of millennials use the public library's computers, Wi-Fi, and library websites. This generation is interested in computer technology, internet connections, and special programming within the library. They enjoy using meeting spaces for group study, community groups, and creation. They like to exchange ideas with one another and see the library as a safe and trusted space. 59% of Americans with college degrees are especially likely to use the library for research, job searching, internet, and special programming. 57% of women use the library for book clubs, volunteering, social interaction, and attending special programming classes such as arts and crafts. 55% of mothers bring children to the library for engaging and fun storytime programming that teaches early literacy skills. While the children participate in the program, mothers are engaging with one another socially, exchanging ideas, and supporting one another. And do you know that almost 50% of public library patrons speak a second language? Many of these patrons are English language learners, and they come to the library for literacy tutoring, conversation clubs, and reading and writing assistance. Learning is done through social exchange and interaction. And we all know that children and young adults are engaging in gaming and homework club activities. So do you recognize a common theme here? Patrons come into the library for social engagement and interactive learning. And that means less books and more user space.
According to a Pew Research poll done in 2013, looking at how people view the services and items within a library, 49% of those polls said that free meeting space was important to them, as stated. But of all the services that were polled, this was actually the lowest item on the list. The highest item, at 80%, was borrowing books. Clearly, borrowing books is still important to modern users. Libraries have a bit of a brand issue. So many people in our communities walk into the building and think that it's just books. And we don't really want to be limited by this brand as we move into the future. But we have to think very critically about why this brand still exists and why it matters in today's world. So many people say that print is dead and that books should be entirely digital. But is that true? When we look at print book sales over the past 5 years, every single year we have seen at least a percentage of increase in book sales. That's significant. It shows that there's still an interest in print media. So how do we utilize our brand and the knowledge that print still matters to our users to really expand and build upon this brand issue? What we can do is really focus in on the demographics that we know use libraries and really tailor to what they need and what they want. The first demographic, as mentioned, is children. We know that they're using our libraries extensively. And when polled by the Nielsen Book Research Company, 3/4 of children said that they preferred print books, whether they were being read to, whether they were reading themselves, or if they'd actually used a digital book in the past. This is a major demographic that we know we want to capitalize on because these are our future users for the next however many decades. Another really important demographic is students. Multiple polls have been undertaken to look at what they prefer in their reading, including a poll done by Hewlett-Packard at San Jose State University. Across all of these polls, at least 50% of students said that they preferred print, whether it was for their textbooks, class reading, or even for leisure reading. This really plays into the idea set forth by Naomi Barron. She points out that many people view digital reading as a passive experience, something that you do while multitasking while using your phone or your iPad. But print reading, that's an active experience where you're really focusing in on the content being presented to you. This type of information can really help us determine what items are most important to have in print. New models, such as the user demand model of collection development, are really capitalizing on that idea that we really should hone in and curate our collections towards what our users want and need, as opposed to providing for any use that we could possibly see in the future. And when we build these collections that reflect our communities, we're really making sure that we are catering to their unique interests.
While 2/3 of patrons do come into the library to check out books, the 2016 Pew Research report revealed a 2% drop in the borrowing of print materials. Not surprisingly, at the same time, there was a 10% increase of patron library use for programming, classes, and lectures. In addition, group meetings such as book clubs and makerspace attendance saw a 2 to 4% increase. In regards to books, the same study showed that 1/3 of respondents polled believe that libraries should definitely remove public access to some print books to free up space for technology hubs and customizable workspaces. Another 40% of respondents said that maybe space should be reconfigured to include fewer print books. So what do our users really want? In that same research study, 80% of Americans believe public libraries should provide programs to teach digital skills. Technology hubs are the most desired need within library spaces. Americans rely on the public library to provide computers, free internet access, free subscription databases, and apps. In addition, many Americans rely on the library to teach them digital literacy skills, computer programs, and social media skills. While technology spaces include computers and comfortable chairs, users also want a twofold experience. First, they want professional instruction for the learning of new skills, but they also want the ability to play and explore on their own. Another space they would like is creative spaces. Eric Johnson, the author of The Future of Library Space, shared that creative space is a designated space with tools or materials and some level of support from library staff through instruction or classes. These spaces, commonly referred to as fab labs, creation stations, or maker spaces, can be as simple as a book cart loaded with craft supplies or as elaborate as a 3D and robotic technology. 50% of Americans expressed that they wanted to be able to learn to create with a new technology. This space represents a physical location where people can gather to share resources and knowledge while they're creating and building. Research shows that 49% of Americans believe the library helps spark creativity among young people. Another area that's desired are quiet study areas. 57% of Americans want the library to provide more comfortable reading, working, and quiet study places. Pew Research reveals that 69% already feel that the libraries do a good job of providing safe and trusted places. They're just looking for them to be a little bit more comfortable, relaxing, and welcoming. A more family room environment for a home away from home feel. 61% of job seekers say that having a quiet and safe place to spend time, read, or study at the library is very important to them and to their families. Also, patrons are looking for interactive social areas. The Hoover Public Library in Alabama offers a coffeeology cafe with ample tables and chairs for business meetings, hanging out with friends, or a quick cup of coffee shared with the morning newspaper. No longer desiring the traditional libraries that say shh and no food allowed, patrons are wanting to meet up at the library to collaborate and mingle, and libraries that are providing interactive social areas are discovering that patrons are flocking in to use these spaces.
While we know that some users of libraries are looking for more interesting and technologically centered services, we can't ignore the people who do appreciate and want to utilize book services. We also have to think about the message that we're sending by physically moving books to the peripheries of our buildings, putting them away in far corners or moving them to off-site storage facilities, or entirely moving to digital books. When we make books harder to find, we're playing into the principle of least effort. People will want to find the easiest answer, even if it's just good enough. And we don't want just good enough for our users. We want to give them the best possible answer, instead of playing into this false narrative that people don't want books anymore. Especially when we take into account that Pew Research found that 73% of patron visits include some type of browsing the shelves for physical media. We have to think about what kind of message we actually want to send with our interior design and our layouts. When someone walks into a building and sees books, they know immediately what kind of building they're in. It helps them know who we are and what we are. Books physically represent information, which is our entire reason for being. They show that we're committed to finding the best possible resources for them as users and as a community. And when we remove books from buildings, we're removing a huge part of our identity and also something that makes us unique within our communities. So instead of forcefully removing print, forcing our users to rethink everything about who we are as organizations, we can instead lean into new marketing models to really help us rethink our book spaces. The Seattle Central Public Library found that when they gave equal priority to digital and print media, they saw improved circulation in both collections. So while we can promote our digital resources, we have to make sure that we're putting our print resources on an equally solid footing. And a great place to start is by looking at the bookstore model of display and shelving. This type of marketing provides clearer signage, more distinctive and intuitive distinctions between genres, and really helps create a welcoming environment that pulls people into the stacks. It really plays on what attracts people to bookstores, which is mingling with the books and with others while they're browsing and looking for new material. The other thing this really capitalizes on is things that we already have in our collections. The digital landscape changes so rapidly, and buildings can't reflect that. It's too costly and too time-consuming. So we have to make really considered choices to make sure that we're not chasing trends wantonly and spending money on things that won't last the test of time. And when we do create a welcoming atmosphere, really play to our people's aesthetic, that interaction that they desire so much will naturally follow.
The library of today is a beautiful architectural place that creates interactive spaces where everyone is welcome. Libraries are a place of inclusion, a place of diversity, a trusted safe space for families with young adults and children, and above all, a community hub for social interaction and shared learning. As libraries transition from traditional book warehouses to inviting community hubs, they must create user spaces that are contemporary, attractive, and welcoming versus sterile, environmental areas with stacks of books. Dock One Library in Denmark was voted the 2017 Library of the Year for its creative spaces and modern architectural genius. Architect Schmidt Hammer Lassen designed the library to create warm user spaces with natural lighting that enhance community engagement. The library includes eating areas, art exhibits, special programming arenas, specializing in interactive spaces that are able to be used by everyone in the community. Within the first year of opening, over 1 million people had visited the library. Libraries are incredibly important to the community. 2/3 of Americans say that if their local public libraries were closed, it would have a major impact on themselves personally, but also on the community as a whole. Clearly, patrons value their libraries and see them as important community hubs. Patrons have made their voice clear that they see the library as a place for users, with spaces deliberately and thoughtfully created to serve the community and their needs. And those needs include creativity, shared learning, social interaction, and quiet reading spaces. The library is no longer a space for endless stacks of books and print materials. My argument is that print materials, while still relevant and essential for patron use, are not what is drawing patrons into the library. Users are coming into the library for collaboration and social interaction. And clear and simple, we need to give them what they're looking for.
Detractors like to say that preserving and emphasizing our print collections is based on nothing but nostalgia, but this overlooks the depth of our position and also the wants and needs of our users. Books still remain relevant in today's world, regardless of whether it's personal preference or the many people in our country today who are on the wrong side of the digital divide. Print still matters to cities and towns all over America. And we have to ask ourselves, what are we sacrificing when we remove books from our libraries? What kinds of organizations are we without books? To this point, I would argue that our path into the future does not lie with the removal of books, but instead in careful innovation and focusing around everything that our foundation is based on. We can curate our collections to attend to our unique communities, and in doing so, we show our commitment to their needs. We can create more comfortable book spaces that create the engaging and inviting atmosphere that our users so want in our spaces at a much lower cost than huge renovations. And when we highlight our uniqueness as an organization, we will continue to serve our users in new and more effective ways without being beholden to traditional dusty librarianship. I would argue that our future lies in books. When looking into the future of libraries, there's no clear winner in this boxing match between designing for users or designing for books. Each library will have to determine for themselves which path will best fit their community's needs. Thank you for your attention.